Let's look at an example of inheritance. So here we have a class point. It has two attributes of type integer, x and y. Then it has a constructor that takes as parameter the value of x, the value of y, and then it assigns those values to the attribute. And then we have a toString method which prints the name of the class and then the values of x and values of y. So then in our drawable object, we're going to have an attribute which is an array of point objects called endpoints. And then it has another attribute of type integer, which is going to keep track of how many points we have stored in the array. Our constructor then has a value passed of the maximum number of points you can have because we want to initialize our array to that many elements. And then a non-point starts out at 0. There are no points, right? And then we have a method called addPoint, which takes as parameter the object type point. It adds it to the next available slot of the array and increments a variable num-points by 1. Okay, so that's a parent class. Then now to create a child class, all we have to do is use the extends syntax and then the class name that we want to create the child of. So we have 2points object is now a child of drawable object. So we have a constructor, and now the constructor is calling the parent's constructor using the method super and passing it to. So what that means is that the drawable object over here is being executed with the max value 2. So we are basically creating in our 2-point object, we are creating an array, a new array, because this code gets executed with the value of 2. Okay, so 2-point object will inherit from the drawable object these two variables, but the array is going to be initialized to only 2 endpoints. Okay, and then we have a line class which extends 2-point object, which means that it is a child of 2-point object and doesn't have any of its own code because it is inheriting the execution that happens of the 2-point object, and it's also inheriting the method addPoint that the drawable object has. The 2-point object, of course, also inherits the addPoint. So to show you how this works now, I have this test line program, and I'm creating 2 instances of points. The first one has values 2 and 4. The second one has values 10 and 8. Then I create an instance of a line, so I'm calling the constructor, the default constructor that every Java class has. So in other words, if your class does not declare constructor, there is always a constructor with no parameters to create an instance of that class. And then notice I am calling a method addPoint on that constructor, right? That method is inherited from 2-point object, which is inherited from the drawable object, right? So I'm calling it to add the first point, and I'm calling it to add another point, and then I have a for loop that's going to go through both points. So notice it is using the non-points attribute, which again has been inherited all the way from drawable object class, and we're printing the 2 endpoints. So if I run it, we'll have it's printing the x equals 2, y equals 4 for the first point, and then x equals 10, y equals 8 for the second one, right? Again, this is inherited from this is actually calling inherited, but it's calling the toString point method. But what is inherited, of course, is the add point and then the attributes. Okay, so this shows you how the inheritance work.